service is based on the wishes of the fallen officer, his family, and the traditions of the law enforcement profession. The Honor Guard will be given preparatory commands for standing, sitting, and saluting at key points. Uniformed members of the audience will don their cover while standing. While sitting, your cover should be removed. For your participation, uniformed personnel will display a military-style hand salute when the command "present arms" is given. Non-uniformed personnel or community members may place their hand over their heart. Salutes are held until the command "Order Arms" has been given by the Honor Guard. During the closing ceremonies, there will be a rifle salute. Please do not be alarmed. Official media, videographers, and family photographers have all been designated for today's service. All audience members and attendees should respect the family's wishes and refrain from videotaping, live streaming, or photographing today's ceremony. Following the ceremony, a sequence of honors will occur out of view of the audience. We will allow the family privacy during that time. Services will begin in just a few moments. Thank you.
Dan's passing, and it'll be placed on there with the 3 other officers who have died in the line of duty from Everett PD, as we talked about, the last one being 20 years ago. Then we'll go into a remembrance service. There'll be a series of speakers, the chief of Everett PD, the mayor, then Dan's dad, and then a brother-in-law. And then as the closing ceremonies begin, that's when you start to see more of the traditions that take place at a typical law enforcement funeral.
And we're looking at some pictures from inside the arena. It is really packed. A lot of people from the community, from across the state, but a lot of law enforcement and first responders have come from really around the country.
Yeah, I know that there are officers from Dallas, Boise, I wouldn't be surprised if NYPD was here, and then there's a contingent from the southern part of British Columbia as well.
I know this is supposed to actually get going here in less than a minute, but it looks like they're still seating people, and that may be because there are so many people who've turned out for this. We saw how long the procession was, several hundred cars, and just getting everybody in there looks like it may take a while.
Yeah, the other factor here that drives the starting of the service is the family. We'll go when the family is ready. So if the family is not quite ready, again, they had a lot to process with the procession, and so when the family is ready to come out, that's when the service will begin.
They're very much involved in putting together the service that we are all going to be part of witnessing today. And there's a videotape that's going to play, and you said it's really special, this video. Tell us what we're going to see.
It's just going to give you guys give us an insight into who Dan was, and the way that the video was done was just marvelous. I think you'll see that Dan had a lot of good things going for him in his life with his wife and his children and his family, his career, and it's just a great remembrance video.
His path to becoming an officer was really interesting and unique to him. He worked at Fred Meyer, he worked in retail for a while. Eventually, he worked at the MGM Grand Hotels, where he met his wife in Las Vegas many, many years ago. I think they met and married in 2005. And then he went from retail to working as a parking enforcement officer for the Everett Police Department. They liked him so much that they encouraged him to become a full officer, and he went through the program. Then they promoted him. And even though he had moved his family to Stanwood, he was very much involved with the community of Everett that he wanted to come back. His dream job in being an officer for Everett was to work in North Everett, where he and his family had once lived. That's where he really wanted to work, and that's where he had been working the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really special if you have the opportunity to work in your community and to be with the people that day in and day out that you kind of have lived with. I think that's really a great thing for an officer to be able to do. So what we're seeing here is the casket watch, and they're being relieved as we speak. The reason for this is once the officers are seated from all the other agencies, those officers now have watch over Dan.
All the officers seated, too.
Yeah.
I hope we're going to be able to hear from inside here shortly. Because there's something even about hearing the footsteps,
Yes.
the pipers. I mean, there's something about capturing the moments, the sound involved in a service like this. Look at how full that room is. This must move the family beyond words.
Yes, it's a great turnout for sure. And in addition to hearing, like you said, the footsteps, there's also the commands that the Honor Guard commanders give that are, I think that for me, really symbolize some of the traditions that we have. Just having that voice that's announcing what's going to happen to the Honor Guard, or what the Honor Guard is going to do.
These things typically start very, very close to on time.
Yeah.
I mean, they really go to the minute. So as soon as it starts, we just want all of you at home to know that we are going to take the service live the moment that we believe it starts. But it looks like it's close. But we will take it as soon as it does start.
What kind of sign are you looking for here? We saw the Honor Guard, who were watching the casket leave. What are we looking for here to start things?
So the ceremonial commander should be announcing here shortly for the audience to rise. And the audience will rise, and then you'll hear a call for the Honor Guard and uniformed personnel to present arms. So that should be what we hear next.
And that will kick off a chain of events, basically.
Yep, that kicks off a series of events that we talked about with the family being seated. The pipers will come in and play through the venue, and then the presentation of colors, the national anthem, and then the battle streamer. And then the ceremony really begins after that for the service.
I imagine there's a lot of support that behind the Badge Foundation, but also the Everett Police Department offers to surround the family, because with two little boys, 10 and 12 years old, it must be just a very, very difficult time for them.
Yes. Looks like we're about ready to begin.
Again, Dan Rocha was just 41 years old. His life was taken in an altercation in Everett, just outside of a Starbucks on the 25th of March. He'd been with the department for a few years, patrolling North Everett for at least 2, and leaves behind his wife Kelly and 2 boys.
Sound attention! Honor guard! Forward! March! Inboard! Base! Sound adjutant's call! Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Honor guard, uniform personnel, present arms. Order! Arms! Honor guard! Ready! Front! Pipers! Sound off! Advance the colors! Honor Guard, uniformed personnel, present arms.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons' command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Colors, ready? Seat. Dress. Cut. Color guard, right? Haste. Forward, march. The audience may be seated.
The Everett Police Department's department flag is adorned with 3 streamers. Each bears the name of one of its officers who have fallen in the line of duty. These streamers represent the spirit of each fallen officer and signify that while they may be gone, they will never be forgotten. The Honor Guard and those who worked closely with Officer Rocha will now add a 4th streamer in his honor.
Honor Guard, ceremonial, about face. Forward, march.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to honor the life, service, and sacrifice of Everett Police Officer Dan Rocha. While it's true that on days like these we feel the deep sorrow of losing one of our heroes, we are also reminded of the true love, admiration, and gratitude that a community can have for those who spend their lives in service to others. So on behalf of the City of Everett, the Everett Police Department, Officer Dan Rocha's family, friends, and fellow officers, thank you for being here today. Your presence is deeply meaningful. My name is Brandy Cruz, and I'm honored to be here to help guide us through today's ceremony. I'd now like to ask Fred Zoller to offer our invocation.
Of many creeds and faiths, we have come as one today to honor the life and the heroic sacrifice of a man, Dan Rocha, and to comfort his family, it is my privilege and sacred responsibility to express the innermost cry of every heart here today with an invocation. So I ask you, according to your own faith, would you join me as I pray? God, by your grace, hear our prayer. By grace, may Dan's loved ones and co-workers and friends be strengthened and encouraged by every word and every part of this ceremony today. By grace, may the story of Dan Rocha make a positive impact on all of us. By grace, may this community constitute itself a wall of love, a defense around every law enforcement officer in our county. And by grace, may our sadness and tears be seen as they really are, the indelible marks of love. Amen.
Our first speaker today will be Everett Police Chief Dan Templeman.
On behalf of the Rocha family in the Everett Police Department, I'd like to thank all of you for being here to celebrate Dan's life and to honor the legacy he leaves behind. There have been so many moments over the past 10 days where I've been truly overwhelmed and humbled by the love and support that has been shown for not only Dan and his family, but for our entire police department. And as I look out here today and see all of you here celebrate the life of our fallen hero, community members, law enforcement from Snohomish County, the state of Washington, around the United States and Canada, this is yet another one of those moments for me. Every day a police officer puts on their uniform and goes to work. They and their families know the inherent dangers and risks that are associated with our profession. But there is nothing, and I mean nothing, that can prepare a family, a department, or a community for a loss as devastating as this. Today is about Dan. It is about celebrating and honoring his life and recognizing the ultimate sacrifice he made protecting his community. But as we reflect, it is important to know who Dan was and what he meant to our community, to our department, and to his family. Becoming a police officer meant everything to Dan. He was built for a life of service. When you think about community policing and what it means to be a true community police officer, you think of Dan. He was kind and approachable and not afraid to strike up a conversation with someone he'd never met before. He had a way of making you feel like you were old friends. Dan made you feel important, like you were the only one who mattered. He took the time to listen and treated everyone with dignity and respect. It didn't matter if you were unsheltered and in the midst of life's daily struggles, or if you were a suspect or a victim of a crime. He saw you as an individual, as a fellow human being deserving of respect. When I think about what Dan meant to our community, I need not look any further than than the police vehicle that sits outside our North Precinct. This patrol car has become a tribute to Dan, to what he meant to our community. It has been a place to mourn his loss, to celebrate his life, and to share stories about how he impacted so many others. I've met dozens of community members who have stopped by to pay their respects, to show their support, or even share a story about Dan. So many wonderful stories, but they all seem to have one thing in common. Everyone spoke about how respectful and polite Dan was, and how he made them feel when he responded to their call for service or spoke to them. One victim said she called the police after someone stole a chair off of her front porch. She recognized that this was not a serious crime, but was still very upset over it. Dan showed up, and rather than treating it like a cold theft complaint and referring her to online reporting, he spent the next hour talking with her and how to protect her home and her property from being targeted in the future. At some point during their interaction, he looked her in the eyes and he said, "I'm going to tell you what I would tell my mother if she was in the same situation." And this made her feel so special, like she was all that mattered to Dan in that moment. This is what it means to be a police officer and truly care about your community. In Snohomish County, law enforcement agencies have the ability to send out customer service surveys after an officer responds to a 911 call. These surveys allow 911 callers the opportunity to rate the officer and in some cases even provide free-form comments. Now, in our line of work, this can be a little risky, as you can imagine. But for our officers, we overwhelmingly receive positive comments. I recall seeing Dan's name on a regular basis in these reports. Many people describe their interactions with Dan using words like fantastic, amazing, the best, and professional. But this comes as no surprise to those of us who are privileged enough to work alongside Dan. But there was one comment that came in after the caller had learned of Dan's passing. And she shared the following. "I will choose to remember Officer Rocha's laugh and his kindness. I will never forget the danger our officers who voluntarily put themselves in danger every day to protect us. Life is short. You never know when will be the last time you talk to someone. Leave them laughing, leave them happy. Kindness matters. You never know what they will face in the next interaction. Thank you, Officer Rocha, for your kindness and compassion. You will be missed and leave a big hole for us to fill." These are words for all of us to remember, not only when we think about Dan, but when we think about the men and women right now who are out patrolling our streets, protecting and serving our communities. It is evident that Dan was highly regarded and deeply respected by the public he served. Dan joined the Everett Police Department in 2017 as a parking enforcement officer, working as an assistant manager after he had worked as an assistant manager at the Fred Meyer store here in Everett. During Dan's time as a parking enforcement officer, he quickly became a part of a close-knit team. His coworkers described Dan as calm, fair, always willing to help, and consistently reliable. Dan was always cheerful and genuinely happy to be at work. He knew he was making a difference in the quality of life for our residents as a parking enforcement officer, but he desired to have an even greater impact on the community he so faithfully served. It was not long after being hired that Dan was recruited by police officers and encouraged to apply. This encouragement, coupled with his own desire to serve the community in a more meaningful way and to be a role model for his two sons, Thomas and Harrison, led him to apply to become a fully commissioned police officer in 2018. After getting hired and attending the police academy, completing field training, Dan's first patrol assignment was in South Everett in the Casino Road area. the same neighborhood as the Fred Meyer that he had previously worked at. While Dan enjoyed this assignment, his ultimate goal was to work in North Everett, which is where he had first lived after moving to Washington from Las Vegas. In less than a year later, he was able to land his dream assignment working as a day shift patrol officer in North Everett in what we call the 14 beat. Dan was an enthusiastic officer who was eager to learn and would seek out the advice of veteran officers on his crew so he could be the best officer he could be. Although he was a newer officer, he never hesitated to jump right in and welcome handling some of the more difficult and complicated calls for service. It was clear that Dan had an immediate impact on his crewmates. His positive attitude, infectious smile, and calm demeanor were all traits that endeared him to his coworkers and to anyone who met him. Dan was a knowledgeable, competent, and hardworking officer who leveraged his outstanding communication skills to connect with a variety of different people with whom he'd come into contact with while on patrol. Dan came into police work a little later than most, but he used his life experience to his advantage. It was this life experience that allowed him to connect with people in ways that not all of us can. It didn't matter who you were. He treated you with compassion, kindness, and understanding. Dan was never afraid to show anyone the man behind the badge, the husband, the father, the son, because he was proud of who he was and what he stood for. One of the stories I learned of after Dan's death involved a woman who he had arrested for a minor assault. As Dan always did, he struck up a conversation with her during the investigation and built a positive rapport with her. But knowing he had a job to do, he did ultimately place her under arrest, but he did so in a dignified and respectful manner. And on the way to jail, they spoke more. They talked about life, their families, their children. Dan let her know how much his family and his sons meant to him. The woman was touched by this kindness, by the kindness that Dan showed her. And although she was very sad that she was not going to be able to go home that night to see her own children, she understood that Dan was just doing his job. So after being at the jail for about an hour and going through the intake process, she was surprised to see Dan reappear again, walking towards her. She thought to herself, what is he still doing here? I know he was already past his shift and he was eager to get home to his family. She never expected to hear what came next. Dan said that he had been thinking about her situation and what had happened, and he knew he wouldn't be able to sleep that night, knowing that she was in jail. So he went to his supervisor and obtained approval to issue her a citation instead of booking her into jail. Hearing this news, she was overcome with emotion by Dan's kindness and empathy. In tears, she asked him if this meant she was going to be able to go home to see her babies. And Dan smiled in the way that we all know Dan smiles, and he looked at her and he said, yes, you're going home to see your babies tonight. This experience changed this woman's life forever. But for all of us who knew Dan, we would just say that this is who he was. He always did what was right, and he saw people for who they were and where they were at, regardless of their situation. Most important in Dan's life was his family. They held a special place in his heart. His wife, Kelly, 2 sons, Thomas and Harrison, and his large, loving, extended family. After spending time with them, I can certainly see why they were all so special to him. If Dan was with his family, he was right where he wanted to be. Whether it was watching Spider-Man or the Avengers or any other Marvel movie, attending a practice or a game with his boys, or walking the dog after work with Kelly, his love for his wife, his 2 sons, and family was immense. To Thomas and Harrison, your dad loved you both so much. He always had a twinkle in his eye and a boasting, prideful smile when he would talk about you with his coworkers. You were his everything. And Dan was a lifelong learner, something he wanted to pass on to both Thomas and Harrison. Dan shared his love for museums with his sons. Kelly said it wouldn't be unusual for Dan to wake up in the morning and at the spur of the moment just say, hey, I'm taking the boys and we're going to go to Canada today to visit a museum. He did this because it was important to Dan to not only enrich his own mind and self, but the minds of his 2 sons through exposure to new and different information and experiences. And of course, Dan loved sports, as you can see. There was no place he'd rather be than at a practice or a game with his sons. Dan himself was an avid sports fan, following World Cup soccer, the 49ers, the Dodgers, and most recently the Seattle Kraken. But Dan's love for sports didn't end with just the understanding of the physical aspects of the game. He truly wanted to learn the games themselves. If Dan's sons were interested in a sport that he wasn't familiar with, he would first research it, learn all the rules, the common jargon, and everything else he could. This not only helped him better understand the game himself, but was just another way for him to stay connected to his boys and be a part of their lives. And then there were the family vacations. And these weren't like your typical family vacations. They weren't about rest and relaxation. They were about packing as many activities as you could into a week and experiencing and learning life together as a family. Dan planned family vacations down to the very last detail. His philosophy was every vacation would have a learning component, and you were going to see something that you had never seen before. When I asked Dan's family about these vacations, the one word that quickly came to mind was exhausting. They always had amazing times and treasured the many wonderful memories they made together as a family. To Dan's family, wife Kelly, sons Thomas, Harrison, dads Charlie and Mike, sisters Morgan and Ray, and the entire Rocha family, I'm so sorry for your loss. For our loss. Dan was a true hero who sacrificed his own personal safety to protect others. He will be missed, but never forgotten. I make this promise to you. We will all be here, all 250 plus members of the Everett Police Department and their families, to stand by you, to support you, and to love you as we walk this difficult road together. So as we lay our hero to rest today, let us never forget who Dan was and what he meant to his family, to the Everett Police Department, and to this community. Dan represented the best of the best, the one who would always lend a hand to anyone in need, the one who respected the badge and was proud of what it represented, and the one who was willing to lay his life on the line to protect the community he loved so dearly. We will never forget you, Dan. Rest in peace, my friend.
Thank you, Chief. Our next speaker today will be the Mayor of the City of Everett, Cassie Franklin.
Thank you all for being here with us today. My heart is heavy and hurting with all of you as we gather together to grieve the loss and honor the memory of our dedicated and beloved officer, Dan Rocha, who died in the line of duty protecting our community. Everett is grieving. This tragedy has shaken our community to its core, and I've been trying to find the words to articulate the pain that we're all experiencing, and I'm failing. Words are woefully inadequate to describe the senseless loss, and I know each one of you here, sadly, understands that far too well. My heart and deepest sympathies are with all of Dan's family and loved ones, especially his wife, Kelly, and his two sons, Thomas and Harrison. And my thoughts are also with Dan's police family, who lost their brother, their colleague, and their friend. I may not know the depth of your loss, but my heart is with you in grief. The role of being a police officer has grown dramatically as you, our officers, keep the peace, fight crime, and protect the community. You are also acting as social workers, as coaches, mentors, and caregivers. You who wear the badge are the ones we turn to when we feel unsafe. You are ready at any moment to run toward danger, not knowing what kind of person or situation you're going to find, but bravely putting your lives on the line for all of us. You are our guardians. Officer Dan Rocha was that guardian. Dan took care of his beat. He recognized the importance of knowing those in his community and understood their individual needs and concerns. He protected our neighborhoods. He helped those in need. Like the chief, I have heard many stories of how Dan went above and beyond in our community, from local health care providers who commended him for his calming presence, to stories from a family grateful for his kindness and compassion when he contacted their disabled, distraught son. Dan treated all with dignity, value, and respect. This past week, we've received an outpouring of emails, calls, and letters filled with love and support for Officer Rocha. Many shared stories of his everyday work, which illustrated his strength, his kindness, and his integrity. These notes have allowed me to truly get to know the kind of character Dan exhibited and the love and pride he had for his uniform and for our community. As a city family, we mourn his loss, and we are so very grateful for the positive impact he's forever made. To Officer Rocha's family and to all the families of law enforcement who are here, thank you for your service and sacrifice. We know that each day when our officers put on their uniforms to protect and serve, you, parents, children, spouses, and close friends are serving with them. We know the love and support you share gives them the strength needed to be here for us when we need them most. And a special thank you to our Everett police family. You serve with honor, integrity, and professionalism. I want to thank every one of you who serves or has served in law enforcement for your courage and for your dedication to your community. You make the world a better, safer place. You stand between good and evil. You protect us from harm. As the community learned of the senseless loss of life, I had to explain what happened to my own daughter, who is close in age to Dan's sons. She, like so many in our city, was asking what, how, why did this happen? I told her simply, Officer Rocha was doing his job to keep us safe. Dan got up in the morning, put on his uniform, and went to work. And his job is to be brave, to be strong, to protect, and do what needed to be done to keep us safe. And that's exactly what Dan did. We have lost a hero, a friend, a brother, a son, husband, and father. Dan touched so many lives and will forever be missed. Thank you, Dan. We will never forget your sacrifice.
Thank you, Mayor, for those words. Next, we are going to hear from Officer Rocha's father, Michael Henry.
I know some of you may be wondering, what's with the red shoes? Well, there's a story behind this. Ever since Dan was probably early high school, he had the same size foot that I did. And whenever, he was also kind of a sneaker aficionado, I guess you would call it. And he would buy the best new pair of sneakers, wear them for a little while. He'd get tired of them, and then he'd put them away. Well, luckily for me, he would give them to me when I would come up to visit. And so I would get all these shoes. And teaching high school in Las Vegas, the students would come up to me and say, "Hey, cool shoes, Mr. Henry." I'd say, "Yeah, thanks, Dan." These shoes he ordered, and they came in the day after. So I wear them now. I want to thank everybody, and the incredible turnout of this community, and for sharing this time with Dan's family. I want to thank the Behind the Badge Foundation, as well as the Everett Police Department and all the amazing officers. I'm Mike Henry, and I'm Danny's dad number 2. I was lucky to meet Danny and his mom when he was about 4. He was a special kid, and he's very kind, sensitive. He liked to grow strawberries. He liked tulips. They were his favorite flower. And he liked to make stuff. He also loved sports. Started him in soccer, and he excelled. I was playing ice hockey at the time in a men's league, and he would come to watch, and he was hooked. He had to play. So I got him involved in ice hockey, and I was lucky enough to be able to coach his teams. And it was a lot of great times and stories as he grew up through the different age levels, travel teams. And then when he turned 18, I was able to get him on my men's league team so we could be defensive partners together. That was the thrill of my ice hockey experience. We're lucky to have one of his oldest friends and also teammates in Adam, one of the pallbearers. He's also with the FBI. And the two of them were definitely a force to be reckoned with out on the ice. Dan showed at an early age his protective instincts. I remember one time, Melanie and myself went to the principal's office after school and said, "What's going on?" Danny said, "Well, there was a big kid picking on a little kid, and I stepped in and took care of it." Now, the school policy is there's absolutely no fighting. But when we got him back in the car, we said he did the right thing. He'd take care of kids that are smaller and weaker. Dan always wanted to matter. He had a singular dedication to becoming a police officer. His friend Mike, who's also here, is a police officer in Las Vegas. And he can tell you stories about he and Danny at the MGM Grand. And he'll tell you that Dan was more like a big brother than a friend. I see in his son Harrison his impish grin and laughter. I see in his son Thomas a quest for adventure and discovery. I see in his loving wife, Kelly, a perfect match, a great mom, and just plain fun. And that his dad, Charlie. Sometimes it's hard to share a child when you're growing up. I'm forever grateful that Charlie gave me that chance. And I know my daughter Morgan will never forget her big protective brother. As a parent, my first reaction when I heard about Dan was that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Upon further reflection, I knew that Dan would say he was in the perfect place at the perfect time to do what he does, serve and protect, and make a better world for his kids. My heart is crushed, but I'm a proud dad. Thank you.
Thank you for helping all of us get to know Dan a little better. Our next speaker is going to be Matt Nicholas. He is Officer Rocha's brother-in-law.
All right, let's see how this goes. There's a lot more of you looking this way than when I'm sitting down. I'd like to thank the mayor, the chief, Mr. Mike. I was doing great, and then you got up here, but I appreciate you. So as we've all heard, Dan is a wonderful person, an extremely hard worker, and a loyal friend of many. We've been a part of each other's lives for 20 years or so. It was funny, my first trip with him, I was with my sister and my wife, and we were going to California, going like 80 miles an hour. And Dan's like, hey, I bet you $20 you can't hit a street sign with an orange. I can do that, sunroof's open. Go ahead, give it a toss, and that didn't even come close. Dan's laughing at me. I'm like, I probably should stand up so I could throw better against the wind. Yeah, not so much, but if you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough, so kept trying. And Dan's just laughing at me the whole time, and that was Dan. If he liked you, he messed with you. And he was good at it. He could get you. He was there for me when I was stationed, when I was in the Marine Corps and I went to Iraq. He stayed. He protected my wife and my sister while I was gone. He had a lot of jobs. He loved to talk about them. He enjoyed working hard. No idea what he was talking about half the time. I don't know what throwing Fred at Fred Meyer means, but he'd sure tell me in detail, and be very proud of it. I'm like, cool. I don't know what that means, but good job, bud. All right. Then he became parking enforcement. That sounds boring, but he did his best, and he worked hard. Always stories, but I never heard him talk with the passion and excitement as when he became a cop. He truly loved it. I don't even know where I am in this speech. All right. Becoming a cop was probably the missing link in his life, that he got to where he wanted to be. The only thing he talked about with more love and passion is when he talked about Kelly and the boys. He truly loved them. Something I've learned this week, I mean, I've learned it before, but it's really driven home now, is time is a fleeting thing. We don't know how much we have in this life. As terrible as a tragedy as this is, Dan was there doing his job that day, right where he wanted to be. He understood that life was meant to be lived to the fullest, and he ensured that his family knew his undying love for them. And all his adventures, he wanted his family with him. We can feel loss, and we can feel sorrow. We can feel an absence, and we can lean on each other. Remember and honor Dan the way he deserved. But we must not wallow in our grief. The best thing that we can do to honor Dan is to live life to the fullest the same way Dan did. Dan was a son, a husband, a father, a friend, and a brother. He was my brother. We will never forget you. Rest easy, Danny. We have the watch.
God bless you and keep you. God make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. God lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Flag detail. Post. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise. Honor Guard, uniformed personnel, present arms! Order! Arms!
SOCOM, Everett 214. Everett 214, Officer Dan Rocha, out of service, gone, but not forgotten.
Retire the colors! Color guard, halt! Fire! Haste! Honor guard, uniformed personnel, present arms! Order! Arms! Colors, ready? Retreat. Color guard, right, haste. Honor guard, inboard, face. Pallbearer detail, post. Honor guard, uniformed personnel, present, arms.
So you have been watching along with us the memorial for Everett Police Officer Dan Rocha, remembered today as a devoted husband and father and a police officer who loved his job, who served with kindness and compassion.
I want to bring back in Captain Ryan Portman of the Puyallup Police Department, who's been also working with Behind the Band Foundation and has been kind enough to give us part of his day. And part of the reason we cut out there is the family was going to follow the casket, and out of respect, we're not going to show their faces. We did see, of course, his dad and his brother-in-law who got up there and spoke today. So,
your final thoughts?
What a very moving celebration of life. There's a couple of things that stuck out to me, but he was recruited by other officers. We don't take that lightly. You know, we want what's best for our profession. So the fact that other officers sought him out and asked him to apply to be a police officer, that means a lot to me, and it tells me a lot about Dan and the quality of a person that he was.
There was so much said about him, and so much stood out, but his second dad, Michael Henry, who said that he was so grateful that his birth father could share him. He was talking about the red shoes, that Dan loved sneakers, and that he was wearing Dan's shoes because they had the same shoe size. And he said at first his reaction when he found out what happened was that Dan was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But then upon further reflection, he said that Dan would say that he was in the perfect place at the perfect time to do what he loved, which was to protect others and the world, make the world a better place for his kids.
Yeah, I think that's what every cop feels, that if it's not me, then who? So the right place at the right time.
Well, and his brother-in-law echoed that sentiment. He said he'd been there to protect his family when he was off fighting in the war, and I suspect the opposite's going to be true now for them.
Yeah.
We are so grateful for your time, 25 years as a law enforcement officer, now with the Puyallup Police Department and with the Behind the Badge Foundation, which steps up every time for families like the Rocha family. Ryan Portman, thank you so much for your time today. We're so grateful. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for watching. We are going to have more reaction from Everett coming up on King 5 News at 4 o'clock.
And we want to leave you with another look at the procession from earlier today in Everett, and these words from Chief Templeman from Everett today. He said, Dan was a true hero, willing to lay his life on the line for the community that he loved so dearly.
Attention! Inboard! Base!
My first reaction when I heard about Dan was that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Upon further reflection, I knew that Dan would say he was in the perfect place at the perfect time to do what he does: serve and protect and make a better world for his kids.